Welcome, folks. I'm Jaby Koay, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
What's up?
We are looking at a video from new Rockstars called Eternals Breakdown, New Details Spotted in 4K, parentheticals, more Easter eggs.
Wow.
So in case you guys missed it, a couple days back, we actually did a reaction to Eternals Black Knight deleted scene breakdown. It was temporarily offline because it got blocked for a moment, and then we said, can you please kindly unblock this? And then they said, okay, fine. So now it's public again. It was a reaction to an emergency awesome video. You guys should check it out if you missed it. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, bell icon, all notifications, and pretty please vote this up to let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching. Also subscribe to New Rockstars. I almost said emergency awesome. Subscribe to them too. Subscribe to New Rockstars. There's a link in the description below for the video that we're about to look at. If you want to click on that, give the original upvote and subscribe to them from there. All right, here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Voss, and Marvel's The Eternals just released in 4K, allowing us to spot lots of new details. So I'm gonna scrub back through this movie frame by frame to break down the new goodies. Now, I will be covering some stuff that I already covered in my opening weekend breakdown. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but not everyone caught this movie when it came out, and I want to try to be as comprehensive as Arishem is when he tells Cersei how pointless everything is.
Yeah.
The film opens with a Star Wars style scrawl, beginning with the words, "in the beginning," the first 3 words of the Bible, of course, establishing this film as its own book of Genesis of the MCU. It mentions the 6 singularities, capital S, lending some sacred status to the 6 Infinity Stones, and the number 6 may connect to the Celestials having 6 eyes. Now, if the Celestials predate the Big Bang, what universe existed before? This could also remind you of Galactus, who in Marvel lore was an explorer named Galen who lived in the pre-Big Bang universe. Now, the script also says the unnatural deviants came from deep space and that the Eternals came from a planet named Olympia, making all of this a lie. Like, should we also doubt the peaceful balance boasted here?
He just says something very interesting. The first thing that you learn in English class is, or at least it's one of the first things you learn is my narrator reliable?
Yes.
Here, it's clear that the narrator's not reliable because the opening text is false.
Sure.
I didn't even consider that until he said it just now.
How rude.
All right.
Cracked into his armor, suggesting he might have been involved in some past celestial conflict that might have caused the beheading of the Celestial Nowhere. On the domo, the craggy statue of Arishem beams together the speaking sphere from a hand that, I just noticed this, it makes this shape, which in ASL means asshole. Dude, come on, Makari is sitting right in front of you.
I don't think that was deliberate.
No. That's also a mudra, is it not? In yoga, and I'm sure in like Hindu religion.
Well, my bigger question is, sign language is not universal across the globe.
That is correct, I
So,
believe. Yeah,
I mean,
ASL stands for American Sign Language.
Okay.
There's BSL, which is British Sign Language. So,
Okay.
what?
It's just that the initials are funny to me, that's all.
This. Now, as that cosmic energy activates each of the Eternals, it starts with Ajax, then strings to Cersei, then to Druig, which might show us the order of succession, because Cersei replaces Ajax, and after her, Druig was really the most outspoken leader. Icarus is at the far end of that, though, the last one to be activated, showing how he was never intended to be the real leader of this group. He was really just a soldier who blindly follows orders. And since we later learn these are all synthetic beings, it's just awesome that they all boot up as a kind of electrical circuit like nodes on a string of Christmas lights. Now, framed in the sunlight of Earth, dead center is Mesopotamia, which anthropologists have called the Fertile Crescent of human civilization. The date is 5000 BC, which really is our earliest records of civilization, dating back to the ancient Sumerians who started in this region. Now, our first shot of human technology in this film is this close-up of a dull blade used to flay a fish, this same tool that Cersei later at the end of the sequence transforms into a more ornate and sharper dagger. And this is actually based on a real-life relic recovered from a royal tomb in the Sumerian port city of which we are probably looking at here. Now, you'll notice the Predator Deviant has 4 eyes, 1 rung down from the Celestial 6 eyes, but 1 rung up from humans and Eternals. Just little evidence showing that the Celestials actually created the Deviants first before the Eternals and humans. The Eternals, Icarus, Makari, Kingo, and Gilgamesh and Athena take down the Deviants. Icarus throughout this is framed with the glare of the sun behind him, as he later is in this movie at Babylon, foreshadowing his fate flying directly into the sun, like the mythological narrative of Icarus that's right based on him. The Domo looms into view on the coast in a dark rectangular shape and frame, evoking the mysterious arrival of the monolith in Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, which also reframes the dawn of man and the advent of technology with extraterrestrial guidance. You'll notice how the stitching on all the Eternals' outfits and their tech and their energy takes the form of circles, concentric circles, overlapping circles, symbolizing their own true nature nature as synthetic beings locked in a cycle with no beginning, no end of planetary caretaking and destruction to gestate the birth of new celestials. Now, the moment Cersei gives the dagger to the boy evokes Michelangelo's creation of Adam, when God sparked consciousness into mankind, a painting which Michelangelo awesomely designed, framing God in the shape of a human brain. Consciousness from
Oh, I never knew that.
Not just a breakdown of Eternals, but of art.
Oh my God, I love art history.
But of Michelangelo.
Bring it, give me more.
We need to see a new Rockstars breakdown of Leonardo, Da Vinci, and Michelangelo.
Yeah.
All of them. Donatello.
I love it. I love
all the
stuff.
Ninja Turtle artists.
Yes, all of them.
The film when Cersei gives Sprite the gift of mortality, like the Blue Fairy with Pinocchio. Now, the music we hear here is Pink Floyd's Time, the opening track of their album Dark Side of the Moon. The lyrics lament losing track of time, kicking around on a piece of the ground, waiting for someone or something to show you the way. The Eternals have been stuck on Earth, burning time for centuries, for millennia, waiting for further instructions from the Celestials. The Marvel Studios title card, which normally flashes pages of Avengers comics, now instead flashes comic artwork from Jack Kirby depicting the Celestials, and then it leads to Iron Man and the rest. Also, you'll notice Shang-Chi has been added to the M of Marvel Studios. In London, above the screen for that dagger is a promo for the GRC, Global Repatriation Council, which we learned about in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's the organization that resettles victims of Thanos' snap after the blip. At London's Natural History Museum, Cersei eyes a whale skeleton. Actually, in a deleted scene, Sprite projects over these fossils the flesh of deviants, suggesting that Cersei may actually be wary of the predator that these remains used to be.
Did you get that sense at all? That she was wary as she was walking through the museum? I didn't get that sense at all. I just thought she was looking up.
Yeah, I just thought she was looking up, but you know, you can add that, you can infer that knowing what you know, and especially with that deleted scene with Sprite where it's like, oh, it was a deviant. Yeah, that makes sense. If I was in a natural history museum and I walked past like a scary thing that I was afraid of, like a big crocodile or something, you know how they stuff them and they make them look really real?
Yeah.
I'd be scared.
I don't know.
No.
If I walked past the skeleton of a child molester, I don't know if I'd be like, ugh, you know, in a museum.
Sorry, no, I was like, wait, do they do that? No, but there was a guy in Thailand, right? He was a serial killer who kidnapped children and killed them.
All right, fine, Ted Bundy. If they had a Ted Bundy skeleton in a museum, in the Natural History Museum, I don't know if I'd be like, huh, you know?
Yeah, sure. You didn't let me finish my story.
Okay, what? The Thai killer.
Yeah, so they found him, and then I guess they killed him, and then they embalmed him. You can see him. Maybe they took him down now because like that's not cool anymore. But when I was a kid, he was still around. So like not around, like he was dead. But you could go to this place and see him in a jar, a big jar.
In a jar?
Yeah.
Like where they put aborted babies? In a jar?
Like a pickle jar. Big one. Because he was a grown man.
That's just weird. And I don't know how that relates to this. Okay. So,
you were the one who brought up like...
But if something was inside of a jar, I would be less afraid. It's that she's walking around with these skeletons that are just right there, you know?
Sure.
In her wild imagination, it's like, oh my God, what if they came to life and ate me?
Or she's having like PTSD flashbacks.
And Whitman quotes the poet Walt Whitman.
In this broad earth of ours, amid the measureless grossness and the slag, enclosed and safe within its central heart, nestles the seed perfection.
Foreshadowing the seed of the celestial Tiamat nestled in the central heart of this broad earth. Cersei, meanwhile, lectures about apex predators, which also foreshadows the Eternals' coming conflict with the deviants in this movie. Cersei gives Dane this ring for the Middle Ages with his family crest. It depicts a raven with its wings folded back. This is the crest of the Black Knight, Marvel's bearer of the ebony blade, dating all the way back to Dane's ancestor of Sir Percy of Scandia, a contemporary of Merlin and King Arthur. Later on in the film, Cersei talks to Dane about his uncle, and in the final scene, Dane begins to tell her about that.
Turns out my family history is complicated.
All setting up the post-credit scene where Dane finds himself in the mansion of his uncle and recovers the ebony blade in a box marked Mors Mihi Lucrum, Death is my reward, and he hears this voice.
Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?
That is Mahershala Ali as Marvel's Blade, setting up a possible team-up between these two. In the comics, they both work on a supernatural fighting team, MI-13, but I'm wondering in the MCU, they might work together as part of the Midnight Suns alongside Moon Knight. In the Camden Lock part of London, you'll notice the band posters on the wall include mentions of Electric God and Stick to the Plan, kind of like these electrical analog gods are really tasked with sticking to Arisham's plan. Now, when Sprite falls, her illusions fade, because unlike Loki, her illusions aren't aren't tangible duplication casting, a distinction that Loki explained in his series.
Illusion projection involves depicting a detailed image from outside oneself which is perceptible in the external world, whereas duplication casting entails recreating an exact facsimile of one's own body in its present circumstance, which acts as a true holographic mirror of its molecular structure.
Now, the mural behind this whole deviant fight depicts a tiger, a wolf, a rhino, and more, framing the deviant as yet another apex predator. Richard Madden and Kit Harrington give each other a knowing look when they meet, recalling their past screen time together on Game of Thrones, where the last words they exchanged were,
"Next time I see you, you'll be all in black."
It was always my color.
and now he is greeting Marvel's Black Knight.
Yeah.
Dane asks,
Why don't you guys help fight Thanos? Or any war, all the other terrible things throughout history.
now, genealogically, Thanos is an Eternal, but born with a deviant gene. Actually, Chloe Zhao explained in an interview with Empire that Thanos and his brother Eros were Eternals with similar roles on the planet Titan, and that she imagined this as why Thanos was so worried about overpopulation while Eros deserted his mission. They watch MCU news service WHIH on the TV, and you'll notice how Sprite unsheaths that dagger. This is the same dagger that she uses to stab Cersei in the back during the final battle. The Babylon battle goes down in front of the famous Ishtar Gate of Babylon, pieces of which can also now be found in museums. Inside that city are the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Ajax is summoned to Ereshkigal, voiced by David Kaye, who voices Optimus Prime in the Transformers. This first shot only shows part of his massive head, and it's impossible for us to take him all in at once at this point in the movie. Really, he's only personified through his voice and through his eye holes, of which we only see 4, which is the number of deviant eyes, giving him a more menacing appearance here. I also like how Chloe Zhao uses Ajax's tiny body to give us a sense of scale in comparison to the eye holes.
Yeah, I appreciate
when
that.
Tiamat rises from the Indian Ocean, and when Ereshkigal returns to the sky in the final scene, we now know from these opening shots how immense these things truly are. Now, at the feast, Sprite reframes the battle that they just witnessed into the actual Epic of Gilgamesh from our history, mentioning both Gilgamesh and Enkidu, a character from the epic whom Gilgamesh defeats, and then the two become friends. Makari barters for the Emerald Tablet, which is another real-world relic of cryptic hermetic text that's poured over by Islamic and European alchemists who associated it with the Philosopher's Stone as a means of producing gold, and contains the famous derived passage, "as above, so below," which is kind of cool to think about in the context of the Celestials, right? As they are above, so is another celestial below our feet. Cersei tries to show Icarus how to make their bread, and he just chucks the dough down sloppily, but she gently pats it flat. I just like this little gesture setting up the conflict in the final battle. Icarus just makes a mess of everything, but Cersei wins by knowing exactly how to hold her hands. Now, in their wedding, I love this shot of the other Eternals. Sprite looks pissed because she's envious. She's the Tinkerbell to this Peter Pan, and Athena gives this apprehensive stare because she never fully trusted Icarus. Now, as they drive up to Ajax's ranch in South Dakota, notice how the terrain is cracked. Their car has to hop over it, just showing how that earthquake that they felt in London was really a worldwide one preceding Tiamat's emergence.
Oh,
Now,
nice
heading
little
into the
detail.
house-
Yeah, I never caught that before.
Yeah, it's like, dang, like they're obviously not using the tax money very well in South Dakota. Couldn't fix a road. Rubbish. Like, no, actually, that makes a lot of sense what he's saying.
Icarus is the last one to walk in, since he knows what they're going to find, and he doesn't want the other two to see and judge his reaction. Though technically, he doesn't lie when he says what killed her exactly.
It was a deviant.
Because as we see later on,
Oh,
all
that's
he
right,
does is
yeah.
really push her into that ice glacier pit, and it's the deviants who kill her. But after Cersei becomes the Prime Eternal, Icarus's envy reveals itself.
Did you talk with Arisham? Are you sure you talked with Arisham?
Which is why instead he suggests that she just might be suffering from
Yeah.
Mad Weary. And to figure out what Mad Weary is, we flash back to the Eternals debating over that 1521 Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire at Tenochtitlan. Sorry I mispronounced it. Though we should note, despite Druig ending this particular battle, Spanish forces
You
overall
went for
still
it.
conquered
Yeah.
the Americas at that time, thanks in part to carrying diseases with them like smallpox. Athena's Mad Weary kicks in, and she and Ajax duel. Ajax gets stabbed in her palm, making a stigmata wound, and later gets stabbed in her side as Christ was at the time of his crucifixion,
Oh,
telling
shit.
her own martyrdom. Notice how Ajax almost snaps Athena out of it.
You are safe. You are loved. You are Athena.
Yeah, Yes, those gunshots are what return Thena's mind to violence, showing that it's really human genocide that triggers her memories of the genocide that they committed on other planets.
The Jesus Christ symbolism I didn't even consider at all.
No.
And you know, sometimes when New Rockstars is doing these breakdowns, I wonder how much New Rockstars is accurate and how much is like they're just finding coincidences. Like for instance, the stuff on the wall with the animals and showing like the hierarchy of the animal kingdom, or the words on the wall that said like the plan, stick to the plan, and it's like it's all about the plan.
Yeah.
Like how much of that is actually related? Like how much of that was deliberate on Chloe Zhao or the producers at Marvel? Like
The set designers too.
Right, but like, did they really mean for the correlation between the two, or is it just New Rockstars happens to find this and they're like, okay, so we're just going to project onto this meaning? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I'm saying this as an ignorant person. You know, I'm like, is all of that actually what the intention was?
I just remember from English class, any good piece of literature is supposed to have multiple layers of symbolism, things that you can break down. Now, each person is going to be able to break it down differently according to their life experience, their knowledge, or whatever. And so it is interesting that he's able to break it down to this level of detail. It would be amazing to think that they do put this much thought into every single frame, every single thing in the background, and that is everything that he's saying is all true. The only way we would know for sure is if we actually asked the people who worked on it.
Right. Well, Marvel is known for putting like tons of Easter eggs in their stuff, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibilities. But I just wonder about accuracy. That's all.
This is the interesting thing, because my sister was really big into art history and stuff too. And she said, you know, regardless of what your religious beliefs are, it's actually super cool to have some knowledge about religion, particularly, you know, Christianity or something, because if you're studying classical art, it comes up a lot.
Right.
And so it makes sense to know it.
Costume is based on Icarus's design. He introduces them to Karun.
Oh, Karun, he's worked with me for 50 years. I trust him completely. Actually, when we first met, he thought I was a vampire, and he tried to stake me through the heart.
Yes, a little reminder that vampires do exist in the MCU, setting up Blade's cameo in the post-credit scene.
That's right.
Then Kingo says,
I can't just go. I mean, all these people depend on me. We just started shooting this movie. It's the first of a trilogy. We just got BTS to do a cameo.
I like the meta nods here to Marvel's own franchise building and how they were able to score a massive pop star to do a cameo in this movie. Then on Kingo's private jet, he collects Captain America's original shield from the first Cap film. And if you remember, the guards in the background of his Bollywood number also carry shields with a similar design.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
You'll notice on the TV screen behind Icarus throughout the scene actually plays The Empire Strikes Back, the scene where Han is frozen in the carbonite. In Kingo's documentary, Cersei says,
I can change a rock into water. I could turn a rock into wood, or a rock into metal.
Kingo brushes it off, but this does seem to foreshadow Cersei's miraculous transfiguration in the final battle.
Yeah.
Sure.
Behind Kingo is 6 movie posters showing his various Bollywood franchises over 5 generations, all of which would have been within 100 years of cinema's existence, which means Kingo refused to wait for whatever branch of his family tree to just get slightly older, and instead, like after 15 or 20 years or so, would just change his facial hair to play whoever this famous actor's still handsome son is. Like, he didn't bother spacing it out to just like 3 generations of himself. In Australia, Gilgamesh meets Karun.
I'm Karun, Kingo's valet. Oh, valet, like Alfred in Batman.
Yes, one of 2 DC references made in this film, along with
Jack, that's Superman.
Jack, it's really funny, Jack.
No,
that is
no,
definitely not
he
Superman.
is Superman.
This is part of Chloe Zhao's goal to really embrace all of superhero mythology as something that was really rooted in Eternals history.
I think he's just saying that and this is something that people have said in the comments before, references to DC have been made within Marvel Comics before.
Yeah, it's just that it exists. Not that Batman is himself a real person or Superman is a real person, but like the comics exist.
The comics exist inside the Marvel universe.
In the MCU, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Athena suffers from Mad Weary again.
Everyone in Centauri 6 is going to die.
It's too late. We can't save them.
Yes, Century 6 is a lesser planet for Marvel Comics from Thor 256, a planet whose population gets sold into slavery. Here, this was a past planet that the Eternals helped the Celestials destroy to sprout a new Celestial baby. As Sprite turns Gilgamesh into a big baby, he says,
Yours is a secret, bro. Odin taught me as a thank you after we helped defeat Laufey's army in Tundra.
Yeah, this is a huge detail that I missed before. The Battle of Tonsberg in 965 AD that was seen in the Thor prologue when Odin beat the Frost Giants and took Loki as his ward. This whole battle was won thanks to help from the Eternals, meaning Odin knew about the Eternals, they were all friends, and if Odin knew about them, and if Thor followed Kingo around as a kid, characters like Loki, like Hela and Valkyrie might also know about the Eternals.
That seems like a big plot hole to me. Those characters were aware of the Eternals. To not try and get in touch with them, like the beeper to Captain Marvel, like to not try to connect with them for some epic end of the world shit like Thanos. Like, why wouldn't you reach out to them and enlist the help of some of the most powerful beings in all of existence to stop this thing from happening? Like,
unless they knew that they're only allowed to interfere if deviants are involved. But then I guess the argument is that, oh, well, Thanos has the deviant mutation or the deviant gene, so...
Comic book movies are full of all kinds. It's rich with plot holes. It's fine. There's all kinds of weird things that don't make sense like that. It's fine. It's entertaining.
Sprite says,
so now that Captain Rogers and Iron Man are both gone, who do you think is going to lead the Avengers?
I could lead them.
Yeah, I like how Sprite calls Steve Captain Rogers, meaning, of course, they were aware of him back in the 1940s when he was an army soldier, and also might be a nod to the fact that Captain America in the MCU is technically now Sam Wilson. Cersei communes with Arishem, and I love how this guy is always revealing himself, his huge massive frame, just on the other side of whatever nearby surfaces they're in Earth. Like, he's always right there, leaning in your face. Watch. And some more amazing scale here as we zoom out from Cersei, and then a massive wall of red blocks her from our view, which then reveals itself as just one of Arishem's fingers. Arishem depicts Tiamat's terrifying emergence from Earth. Tiamat's hand crashing up through the crust causes the power grids of all the nearby cities to flicker out. Actually, before the whole cities flicker out, you can see the little tiny power plants of those cities flickering out first.
That is really interesting, though, about the scale, which makes me curious because they've made such a big effort to show the Celestials as huge. When the Eternals are close to Arishem, he's humongous and they're tiny. And then with Tiamat coming out of the earth, it's like a little bitty baby hand coming out. Like, wouldn't it be like a whole hand just exploding the earth? Do they grow afterwards? Are they just like smaller sized and then they grow bigger? Because I'm like, he doesn't really seem that big.
I think your sense of scale is a little bit warped, and that's not your fault. It's confusing.
Yeah.
When they show Cersei relative to Arishem, that scale is like, okay, he's that big, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about it is he's probably as big as the Empire State Building.
No.
Yes. Wider, but I'm saying his height. His
whole body, no way.
I think so. I think that's the idea.
But like they've showed images of them just like hanging out in
He's not as big as
space.
Earth. He's nowhere near as big as Earth. I don't know why you could see his whole head the way you did at the end of the movie. That scaling didn't make any sense to me. He's not the size of the moon. You know what I mean? And so
I don't know.
The moon is 1/4 the size of Earth. Okay? He's not that big. He's not 1/4 the size of Earth. He's a huge dude, but he's about the size of a very, very tall skyscraper. If I were to try to contextualize it in terms of things we understand, it's still kind of funky. The baby Celestial coming out of the Earth is still quite a bit large.
Oh, really? You think it's too big?
I think it's too big, actually. Like, relative to everything else you're seeing, let's assume for the moment, just go with me on this. Let's assume for the moment that what I'm saying, it makes a bit of sense, right? A Celestial's about the size of a very, very tall skyscraper. It doesn't have to be the Empire State Building. It could be any one you pick, right? The one in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Assuming that it's about that size, that hand coming out of the Earth is way too big. It's way too big. That's all I'm saying.
But then how do you know that Arishem is the size of the Empire State Building, though? On what is your...
I'm just basing that on the comic books. I'm basing that on the one comic I read by Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
Like, based on that, assuming that material holds any value of accuracy with regards to how these characters are supposed to be portrayed, they're not the size of the moon. The thing about it is, it actually doesn't take that big of an object to completely annihilate Earth. It could be like 10 kilometers across, and that's enough to destroy the Earth if it was an asteroid coming in, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so something coming out of the Earth, I don't know how all that shit would work. I'm not a physicist or an astrophysicist or anything like that, but all I know is that scale does not make sense. One of the scales doesn't make sense, but it's sort of necessary for us, for the layman person, for us to feel suspense.
Sure.
We visit the World Forge, which has tunnels snaking into it with tiny bits of light, which are for each Eternal returning to be rebooted here. The interior of the Forge is structured with a steampunk design of gears and rings like the inside of a clock. As Airsham explains the Deviant's evolution, one Deviant attacks these green-skinned humanoids. We might be looking at early versions of Skrulls, because the Skrulls originated from the planet Torfa, and the Skrulls were considered the deviant strain of that species. Then onto Druig's Amazon village, we see a blacksmith hammering away like Tony Stark in the cave in Iron Man. Actually, come to think, the way Phastos designs all of his technology in this movie using his holographic interface is also pretty similar to the way Stark operates. When Dane calls Cersei, playing Lizzo's Juice, notice the photo on her screen shows Dane with his Black Knight Raven family ring. That ring is framed once again during their FaceTime.
What about King Midas? Everything he touched turned to gold. Was that you?
Dane.
Confucius?
Call your uncle.
What? My uncle? No.
You've always wanted to make amends with him, right?
Now, Dane Whitman's uncle is Nathan Garrett, the previous villainous Black Knight, from whom Dane inherits a castle and finds the Ebony Blade, which is where that post-credit scene takes place. In this scene, he also calls Cersei King Midas, setting up her reverse Midasine Tiamat's golden body into marble.
That's
now,
right. I didn't think about that.
Out of there.
How many cameras did you bring, young man?
Yeah, I love how she calls him young man. And then Kago gets his big move. Now, Dishoom is a kind of onomatopoeia that's used in Bollywood movies for flesh-on-flesh hits like kapow or blam. But this is my favorite kill of the movie, simply for the practical effect of all that green blood spilling all over Kumail Nanjiani's face. Cersei turns a deviant into a tree, showing that she actually can transform sentient beings, despite her belief otherwise, and of course setting up her ability to do this to Tiamat. The alpha deviant kills Gilgamesh and absorbs his life force, turning him into a more humanoid form of Crow, voiced by Pennywise actor Bill Skarsgård, who accuses the Eternals of hunting his kind.
You are not saviors, Eternals. You are murderers.
And then we meet Phastos at the site of Hiroshima, August 8th, 1945, the day American forces dropped an atomic bomb on the city. Phastos tells his husband and son that Icarus and Cersei are named Isaac and Sylvia, a nod to their human aliases in the comics of Isaac Ike Harris and Sylvia Cersei. Inside, Icarus reads a Star Wars coloring book, and then he wrecks Phastos' table.
What's this even made of? Vibranium?
Fall collection. IKEA.
You know, it wouldn't take an Eternal to break that IKEA table. They've been making their shit cheaper lately. It's a lot easier to break than it was 10 years ago.
Sure.
They've gone with cheaper wood.
This is a subtle implication that Phastos might have at least helped the Wakandans craft their vibranium into the technology they have. They dig back up their Domo ship in Iraq and join Makari, who wears a shirt for H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, a story with a similar plot about extraterrestrial world enders who end up unsuccessful. Kingo calls her Miss Havisham, referencing the hoarder of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. And we see how Makari has collected a ton of stuff from throughout history. An ancient Egyptian statue of the deity Bastet, a painting called La Leçon de Musique, which hangs in the Louvre, a Roman imperial eagle staff with SPQR for Senatus Populus K Romanus, a Big Mac and its carton, the Holy Freaking Grail, that's the same design from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the Chimera of Arezzo statue, which in real life resides in the National Archaeological Museum of Florence, a throne that is not the UK St. Edward's chair, but at least one similar to it, a medieval suit of armor, and a PlayStation VR headset. Dina and Sprite play with this stuff.
Is that the Ebony Blade?
Excalibur.
Arthur always did have a crush on you.
Confirming that these Eternals were really part of Dane's family history as well, and then Icarus and Druig trade some Twinkies for that Emerald Tablet they were talking about before. So let's jump ahead to the emergence happening. Makari sprints across the world, and we see some fun landmarks, the Glenfinnan Viaduct of Scotland, and then the Christ the Redeemer statue of Rio de Janeiro. Then she stops in the Indian Ocean, where we see some nearby oil platforms drilling, baby drilling. This could be a spot of the crust that is filled with oil pockets, making it a bit thinner for Tiamat to crash up through. During this battle, Cersei transfigures the volcanic rock into a flock of birds, the same kind of move Doctor Strange pulled against Thanos in Infinity War, making her that kind of Doctor Strange wizard that Dane accused her of being.
Are you a wizard, like Doctor Strange?
And during this final battle, Icarus angrily fires his laser eyes at the sky, evoking an iconic frame of Icarus from the comics, and Tiamat rises out of the Indian Ocean. Folks, this is crazy. It really should create an insane seismic event that would destroy most of the planet. But it looks awesome.
The scaling of that is much larger than they even showed in that comic panel just there. See what I'm saying? In the comic books, they're smaller, which to me makes more sense. I don't know, like, it's so strange the way they decided to do it in the movie.
It looks epic though.
It does look epic, but goddamn. That would have broken Earth, even just that.
There would have been massive tsunamis, you know, like a volcano in the ocean will cause tsunamis in a bunch of places. A volcano erupts in Iceland and the whole world has, you know, and the whole world feels its effects. Stop.
I'm sorry. I know what you did there. You really did it for the sake of editing, but it's hilarious to watch. I couldn't help myself. I thought that was gold.
Jaby, when you do it,
I know.
I have the decency to hold my face and act interested when you say it for the second take.
I know.
And then with me,
you'd be perfect for what's his name, the YouTube magician, Zack King. You'd be great for his videos.
Yeah.
Not me.
You're awful. The worst.
All right.
Go away.
Cersei is the victor of the hour. She's the one who transfigures him into marble. And this process is really a unimind that links all of them, including Tiamat, and we see them being linked in the following order. Cersei, then Druig, then Sprite, then Phastos and Makkari, then Thena, then Icarus. If you think about it, this was the same exact order they were in back on the Domo in the opening sequence, but of course, sadly, Ajax and Gilgamesh removed from that. Even in the unimind, there is an order of succession here. Now, Icarus's memories of Cersei rewind backward through their time together back to their wedding day and their time in Babylon and the first moment they set eyes on Earth from space when Cersei said,
"It's beautiful, isn't it?"
Yes, reminded of the word beautiful, the same word that Icarus tried to teach himself in the Babylonian language to Cersei the day he proposed, leading him to fly into the sun. Though I have a good feeling this guy survived, probably popped out the other end with more powers.
No, I thought it was confirmed that he died, wasn't it?
The movie ends with Thena, Druig, and Makkari departing Earth on the Domo to seek out other Eternals on other planets, while Kingo, Sprite, and Cersei stay behind on Earth. And in that final scene, as Dane begins to tell Cersei about his family history being complicated, clouds form in the sky and Airsham appears, zipping Cersei up to him, along with Phastos and Kingo. And he says,
"You have chosen to sacrifice a Celestial for the people of this planet. I will spare them, but your memories will show if they are worthy to live, and I will return for judgment."
Allowing him to complete his arc to become his title from the comics, Arishem the Judge. And rather than every other time we've seen him disappear, just dematerializing out of view as if lowering a curtain in front of him, now we see him kind of zip into his own black hole.
Even with that scaling right there, like you can see the people and then you can see Arishem, right?
Yeah.
That scaling is similar to the scaling of a really big building and a person.
I guess so, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there.
Jaby wins!
Holding in on himself. Now, the post-credit scenes introduce us to Harry freaking Styles as Eros, brother to Thanos, and his buddy Pip the Troll, voiced by Patton Oswalt, actually learned of a conceived alternate ending to this scene that was actually shot, according to Lauren Ridloff, that would have shown this group actually communing with Arishem. And then, of course, the second post-credit scene, confirming Dane Whitman's destiny as the Black Knight, finding the Ebony Blade in his Uncle Nathan's mansion, and I love the little detail of the surface of that blade reaching out to his fingers, a blade that is calling to him.
This was interesting, and it made me wish all the more that Eternals was a show instead of a movie.
Yeah.
Going through all of these details, I'm like, dang, this would have been so much better as like an episodic show where you could really get into the nitty-gritty of all these things, these instances in time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you could jump around all you want and really get to know the characters better. No scenes need to be deleted, you know?
All scenes can be included.
Yeah, it's okay to be a little bit repetitive in a TV show because you're catching up people on information and whatnot.
Sure.
And so I just feel like it was a lost opportunity there. There's plenty of TV shows with huge movie stars, so I don't see why this couldn't be one of them. I know that they got a lot of A-list stars, but like that still could have been a show. It seems like the same amount of effort is going into a movie as does a Disney Plus TV show. So
right, I mean, the movie itself was what, like 2.5 hours or so? So basically 2 movies or 2.5 movies.
But it allows the opportunity for things to breathe.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You know?
But I'm just saying, like Angelina Jolie, for example, she's a big star. She might have other things
barely in
going
the
on.
movie. It's just mostly was in the closet, hiding,
hanging out,
mad
weary.
Because of Mad Weary.
Yeah.
There was one thing that I haven't heard new Rockstars talk about, and I forgot who told it to me. It seems a little bit strange that Phastos didn't ever bring up his issues with slavery. Like it never bothered him. Doesn't that seem odd? Like he was so upset about Hiroshima. 400 years of slavery never even made the conversation.
Yeah.
It just
maybe
seems,
it was just like too hot or too political to
Might
be
have been.
putting into a Marvel Disney movie. You know what I mean?
You'd think
Like-
at least one of the characters would have something to say about it. It's just a little bit odd for all of the attempt at shining a light on stuff and like being inclusive and all that.
Inclusive,
It just
yeah.
seems like an obvious one if you're going through history to kind of at least mention. Maybe it's because it's not related to technology in any meaningful way. That's why Fastos had nothing to say about it. I feel like there's an argument to be made there's a strong argument to be made for why Fastos should have highlighted that as one of his reasons for like just being done.
Yeah.
That's an aside more than anything. I really appreciated all the little details in here. I mean, there was obviously some repetitive information because we've been following new Rockstars videos. Not everybody does. If you are, you will have seen some of this before, at least a lot of it before.
Yeah.
But there were some cool little things that I didn't pick up on before, like the tubes he said of the Eternals returning back to
Yeah.
the source. I thought was pretty neat.
I just liked all of the references to classical art and
Literature.
and stuff. I think that's so cool.
The biggest one that stood out to me was the Jesus Christ analogy, or the symbolism of the Jesus Christ, like, cause the hand piercing,
Yeah.
like that is very much like so tied to Jesus.
Yeah.
Like that's a very like, that's an image that's ingrained in my mind of the nails going through his hand, right?
You should have known.
Well, yeah, I
you
should have
good
picked- well-
ex-Catholic
Well,
boy.
and even the way she died kind of looked like Jesus hanging on the cross.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I don't know if he pointed that out, but it was like a moment. And then being stabbed in the rib, I'm like, oh my God, that's right.
Yeah.
I cannot believe I missed that. We never quite got an answer about the unreliable narrator. I guess it's just assumed. Yes, the narrator
Yeah,
is unreliable.
I think that's what he was pointing out.
Yeah.
He was just kind of pointing out the fallacy in like basically the bill of goods that they sold us at the beginning of the movie, right? And
Yeah.
then later on we find out, oh, it's all a crock of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing I'll say is it was neat, the simple detail of slowly revealing Erisham and, you know, the connection with the deviants and whatnot, because of, like, he's got 6 eyes, the deviants have 4 eyes, and
Yeah.
then, you know, humans have 2 eyes, showing the order, the hierarchy of creation and all that. I thought that was a neat way to sort of classify it. Evolutionary standpoint, I don't really get the 6 eyes. Like, it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me. I can't think of a creature other than a spider that has eyes like that. Or spiders have 2
Flies,
eyes, right?
I
For some
thought
reason, I thought for a second the spiders had 8 eyes or something crazy like that.
flies have multiple eyes. I believe they have eyes all over their body.
What? Really? I thought they just had 2 bulbous eyes with a lot of like lenses in it.
Oh, or maybe it's that. Or I didn't really pay too much attention in science class. Or maybe they just have eyes that see a whole bunch.
Most species only have 2 eyes, which is also unusual among spiders. A few species of Caponidae variously have 4, 6, or 8 eyes. In some species, the number of eyes will increase when the spiderling changes its skin as it grows towards adulthood.
So I guess it's like there are some creatures
There are
that
some
have
yes.
more than 2 eyes.
Yes, but there's an adaptive reasoning to it. What would be the reasoning for having 2 pairs of 3 eyes? It just doesn't.
I mean, it would make more sense to maybe have some at the back
Yeah.
of your head or like on the side.
It
so
seems
you can
more
have
like
360 vision.
It seems more like a backup, you know, like a second kidney.
Oh, kind of like sharks and their teeth.
Sure.
You know about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
This was a fun video, you guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And let us know your feelings, thoughts, theories in the comments below. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.